through these webinars. And the first one is on a topic which is very close to our heart, that is heat treatment. The topic is going to be delivered by our member Sigma Weld through Mr. Nimesh Chinoy, who is already on the line. We request you to keep in touch and look forward to your joining our future webinars, which will be held in next 2 to 3 months. We have planned some 4 to 5 webinars in next 3 months. So looking forward to your attending these webinars as well. Over to you, Nimesh.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Abne Sahab. Once again, good evening, everyone. And welcome to the webinar on induction heating applications for heat treatment. In general, we'll be covering induction heating as what it is. A brief introduction about myself to begin with. I'm Nimesh Chinoy. I represent Electronic Devices Worldwide Private Limited. We have been in the field of induction heating equipment manufacturing since 1974. So to speak, even before I was born. And rather, induction runs in the blood now because I have been growing up, and my early memories of induction are as way back in the 90s, where the IMTEX used to happen in Godrej complex. And as a young school student, after school, I used to go and stand on the booth and show that induction was so safe and so easy that even a child could do heating of a job without much difficulty. Today, we as Electronic Devices are into various applications of induction heating, induction sealing, welding equipments, and automation systems. And we will take you through a journey of what induction is in general and few applications specific to the pre-weld, post-weld heat treatment. But we will, before we deep dive into the pre-weld, post-weld, we will talk about various applications of induction heating that are there. And we will take questions as in we go along. So without wasting more time, let's begin. So first of all, since you all have taken out your precious time and you're going to be here for the next hour or so, and we are going to interact, let it be an interactive session. By that, what I mean is we will share a lot of polls. So for those of you who have logged in from your mobile, from your laptops, you should see something like this on your phone set, this symbol here. Otherwise, if you will see something like a more symbol with 3 dots, if you click on that, you will see an option for polls. So every time I launch a poll or I ask you some questions, I would request you all to answer. This way it will become a very interactive session. So now that you all understand what this is, there is also a similar symbol there for question and answers. So if you have any questions while we go along, please post them there. Since we have so many of us, it's difficult to give everybody a voice access. There is a Q&A tab. Leave in your questions there. I will look at them at the middle or at the end of the session and answer as many as I can. Those which I won't answer or I'm not able to answer due to the time paucity, I will reply to you all by email. I promise you that. Okay. So let's begin. Right. So the program flow for the day is something like this. We would have a quick look at the basics of induction heating, what it is, the science behind it. We'll compare the heating technologies between gas-based, electrical, and induction. We'll see what advantages does induction heating have. Cost-benefit analysis of the process. What are the cost benefits that can be there? Practical solutions in the industry. So we'll take you through a series of actual executions on the field or trials done, and we will share the time motion study for the same. We'll share the cost wherever possible on the same. And we'll see how during this sharing itself, we can understand the improvement in productivity that induction can support. Okay. And of course, there will be Q&A at the end of the session. Right. So what is induction heating? Induction heating is an accurate, fast, repeatable, efficient, non-contact technique for heating metals or any other electrically conductive material. Simply to say, if you all remember your childhood days and you would have some point in time played with a magnet, it's just like a magnet. So if you had a magnet in your hand, as long as there was no metal around it, As long, yeah, we are recording the webinar. In case somebody leaves in between or the networks are not good, I will share the link at the end of it, so it's beneficial to all. Now, coming back to it, if you had a magnet and you put it on a paper, you would see no reaction. Similarly, an induction is the same case. And if you put a metal through it, only the metal gets impacted. Conductive metal, rest has no impact of induction. So it has to be an electrically conductive material. Let's dig into the history of induction heating. Michael Faraday is generally credited with the discovery of the fundamental principles underlying the induction heating. Initially, it was a problem child. Everybody was doing research on induction to find out how to reduce its effects. The effects were causing problems in devices like transformers, motors, generators, where they had a lot of winding of electrical cable on top of a metal, and they were causing other parts to get heated and making the overall process inefficient. So a lot of focus early on in the 1790s and 1830s was largely on the reduction of impact of induction rather than use of it. And then they realized that it has so much power and so much opportunity that they could use it to do many things, including melting metals. So the initial start of induction was in about 1916, where they started use of induction for the possibility of metal melting. Early applications were melting small charges of metal using spark gap oscillators. Spark gap oscillators, most of you would have remembered your age-old radios or transformers, and you could have seen a bulb kind of a device there. That was an spark gap oscillator, and vacuum tubes. So they also used induction heating to heat metallic elements from vacuum tubes to drive off or absorbed gases prior to sealing of the vacuum tube. Again, you could heat it with the non-contact from outside, and thereby you could do that without having anything getting inside itself. Today, induction has taken its place in the industry as good as making a speeding part production, reduction in production costs, and achieving very good quality. It has also taken a role in our household impact, and you can very comfortably now see the induction cooktop that most of you use. I have had the privilege of having a look at it way back in the early 80s and early 90s, sorry, late 80s and early 90s, where one of the trips my father had the opportunity to pick up one induction cooktop, which was that time used only in hospitals as a quick measure to sterilize tools. So early surgical equipments that were sterilized before the operation, that was the use of the modern induction cooktop that you see today. It all began with Faraday's law. So what was Faraday's law that says, and what does it say? Basically, magnetic flux exists. And in Faraday's experiment, they realized that a steady magnetic flux doesn't do anything. But if you kept changing the magnetic flux, then it had a very positive impact of inducing an electric current on the object. When the magnitude of the induced EMF, electromagnetic force, is proportional to the rate of change of magnetic flux. Now, what this meant was frequency, and what this means is the current induced. Okay, so this is just to explain you what are the key factors that go into induction and how it all came about. If you look at, if I had to explain this to you in a very, very simple term, most of us today have seen an induction cooktop. So I'll take that example to explain the principle of induction heating. If you see this, you would have an induction coil placed below the surface, and on top you would have had a glass or a toughened surface or a plastic surface, which is non-metallic. You would have the coil designated. Now this is the coil, which is a copper wound in circles over here. This inductive coils in the cooktops typically operate at frequencies of about 20 to 40 kilohertz, which means that is the frequency at which the magnetic field will also be generated. These are the blue lines that you can see the magnetic field being generated. Now, if you switched on your cooktop and put your hand on it without any metals on your finger, you would not feel any heat, right? Because your hand doesn't conduct, there is no impact of magnetic field on your hand. But if you put a metallic vessel on top of it, when you added water or anything to it, the vessel would now be in the path of the magnetic field. Now, this magnetic field, which is an alternating magnetic field, would induce current in the metal. And this orange zone shows that the metal will start getting heated up quickly. And since the metal starts getting heated up, it conducts the heat onto the object inside the vessel, that is your water, milk, tea, whatever you wanted to boil or cook. That's the basic principle of induction. Again, while this pot was boiling, you remove the pot, put it onto the side, take your hand and touch the surface of where the pot was, you will not feel any heat. So it's a very cool and fast heating process. Important things to consider when we look at induction or when we talk about induction. One of the most important parameters is power. Now, power is current times voltage. So which current are we talking about? The current that is flowing through the coil that is generated, the alternating current. That determines the intensity of the magnetic field generated. The frequency of operation of the equipment decides these length of the magnetic field or the depth, right? So the higher the frequency, the shallower the penetration or the heating effect. So if you want to do case hardening, typically, you would have looked at one of these surfaces that you would be touching only the surface. If you wanted to reduce the frequency, so when I talk about high frequencies, I'm talking about anything over 100 kilohertz, you could consider it to be a high frequency. Above 450 kilohertz, you would consider it to be radio frequency, right? And that would give you really fine case depths. If you lowered the frequency, you would see more deep penetration or more heat going internally. And when you do it really low frequency, so you would be doing, say, something like forging, where you want to heat the billet completely inside out, or you want to do through hardening. At that time, you would be operating your induction heaters at a very low frequency, maybe 150 hertz, 500 hertz to about 1 kilohertz. That would help you do that. Now, what is the other thing that makes a difference? So if you go back to our example of the magnet, when you use a magnet on a paper, you have no impact and you don't feel any force in your hands by holding the magnet. But the minute you take the magnet close to an object which is metallic, you will feel a sudden force pulling the magnet towards the metallic piece, or pulling the piece towards the metal. You would feel that force in your hand. Similarly, the distance between the coil and the job inside the coil, if it was too close to the coil, this is called coupling. The closer the fit, the more the heat transfer, the more the load that the equipment will take on, the faster will be the heating area. The poorer the coupling between these two, this would be a lesser coupled, it would heat lesser compared to this range here, okay? And so these are factors when we talk about induction that matter. These are just the concepts I'm sharing with you. When we go down to different applications, we will see more of these in detail. Next, if I look at it, one of the fun facts is that during the World War II, just years prior to World War II, a few companies had started working on induction as an industrial substitute for heating. However, it really became popular and it grew more intensely during the World War II, as there was an immediate need for producing large number of parts with minimal labor. I guess I wouldn't call this World War III, but we are in a situation right now which is very similar, where the time available in the year is going to be much lesser than the amount of work we would have on our hands to complete, which has begun as of now, right? So induction can play a good role for you to speed up the things as we move along. Now let us understand the kind of application range that you can do with induction heating. So here are a few examples. So hardening is one of them, whether it's case hardening, through hardening, you can do hardening with induction. You can do annealing with induction, bright, black, wire annealing. You would have normalizing. If you wanted to take the material to a temperature just below Curie point and hold it there so that whatever stresses were there were relieved. Then you could do stress relieving, you could do pan bottom brazing. So all the vessels that you use right now, any utensil is also annealed so that it can be given a shape without cracking. You can see pan bottom brazing is used for all the pressure cookers that you use. They are either impact bonded or pan bottom brazed. So there is a sandwich brazing between the inner vessel that on which you put the food, and on the base which goes on top of your stove or on your induction cooktop, a flat layer which is brazed in between both of them is a layer of brass and alloys which form a permanent bond between the two layers. That's pan bottom brazing or impact bonding. Then you have resin bonding. So every time you use pipes or oil and gas pipelines which are going underground are needed to be coated with a layer. If you see that black layer, that's resin bonding. Then there is sintering for diamond tools. You have to do forging for all your automobile components, for your nut bolt heads, various items that are forged. Induction is used to preheat to the temperature. So here's a billet, completely red hot. And you can get induction heaters to the capabilities of 2000 kilowatt and 3000 kilowatts, which can heat a 125 RCS billet block within seconds to 1200 degrees. Yes, that's the speed that induction can have and the consistency. Brazing, again, if you look at here, this is a banjo brazing. Then you have your fuel tanks brazed. I think your diamond cutting tools, drilling tools, they are all, drill bits are all brazed with induction. You have partial heating. So if you had torsion bars and heads that you wanted to give shape to, partial heating, soldering of connectors, conductors, metal melting. So most of the metal today is produced by melting using induction. You have also precious metal like gold. Gold alloying is also done through induction. String fitting. So we'll see a couple of examples of string fitting also. But string fitting, all your motor to stator casings, your compressor, stator to rotor string fittings. Then you have bigger bearings that you want to put into the bearing housing. Those kind of string fittings can be done with induction. Pre-weld, post-weld heat treatment is what we'll be talking a little more about as we go along. Some of the features that you are not very clear, that they are induction, but I'll show you how. So this is one example is induction cap sealing. So if you've been taking any medicines, any nutraceuticals, if you look at your lube oil, your lubricants, your food packing, Bonvitas, Horlicks, anything that you open that has an aluminum foil on it, this has been sealed with induction to a large extent. And in induction, what happens is it's an indirect heating. We heat the aluminum foil through under a tunnel. And when it gets heated, it melts the wax on top of the foil and releases itself from the board that is holding it. And because it's pressed firmly against the bottle, the soft poly layer below the aluminum forms a hermetic seal here. Again, induction speeds here can be as high as 300 bottles a minute. You can look at something like a carbon water filter cartridge, which is there in your water purifiers, whether it's RO or whatever you look at. Now, this is a carbon filter, but on top and bottom, they need to put the plastic caps. Now, how do you put a plastic cap and let it stick there? So they have to do a hot melt glue over here. Again, how do you put a glue and put this up with the speeds of production that you're looking at, maybe 120, 200 candles a minute? It's very difficult to do it with general process. Through induction, we put a small washer here on top with a preset glue ring, put the assembly in place and just let it go under a conveyor on top below the induction coil. The induction coil will only heat the metallic washer. The washer has got perforations in it. It melts the glue and forms a bond over there on the fly. If you've ever been to a hospital or taken an injection, you've been using a catheter tube. This catheter tube has a specialty that at the tip of it is shaped on both sides, inside and outside. Now, how do you give it a shape? Because plastic melts pretty fast. You take a mold which is made out of graphite, and in the mold, you take a syringe on top of this plastic and they push it inside the graphite mold. We heat the graphite, it indirectly heats the catheter tube and gives the shape it wants. Again, very precise operations used in medical fields as well. To give you another two very different examples, one of the classic ones is Mahindra and Mahindra Kandivali team. They were using, when they make the Jeeps, the spot welds that come onto the bonnet have dents. Now to fill up those dents, you need to use solder. So how do you solder on top of a finished good? You will have to heat a sort of a hammer, put it in place and melt the solder there. Now, heating that hammer on the shop floor, you would need gas. And that gas all the time being on a production line poses an health and safety risk. A lot of precautions need to be taken. By switching over to induction, they could simply put the hammer in, turn the button on when the car is approaching. Within a couple of seconds, the hammer gets hot. Use the hammer to do the soldering, put it back in its place. Absolutely safe mechanism. Nobody gets any risks. Removes the sole from shoes. One of the weirdest examples I have seen, and this is how far the application of induction technology is. It's limited only to your thought process. In Iran, when they were making shoes in a particular company, the rejects that were going out of the line, they needed to remove the sole and keep the top shoe intact. Now, to remove the sole, which has already been glued, it was very difficult to pull out the rubber and time consuming. They put an induction heater, which would indirectly heat the nails or which were hammered into the shoe. And once those nails get heated up, the rubber would give way and come off much easily. So this is as far as you can, think about applications for induction. In modern times, you have also seen induction cooktops used in all applications. Now, before I move on to the comparison, I will just pause a bit and take a few questions. Right, I see a lot of questions here. Mr. Rajan Kumar has asked a question that during case hardening, whether frequency would be high or low. Kindly explain. During case hardening, the frequency will be very high, sir, because it depends on the case depth that you want to achieve. And it would be higher to give you the lower the case depth you want, the higher the frequency. So if you are case hardening a shaft, for example, and you wanted a case depth of only 0.6, 0.8 or under 1 mm, your frequencies would be upward of 200 or 150 kilohertz. And if you are doing say 4 mm, 5 mm thickness case hardening, then your frequency could be medium or low. I hope I've answered that. Kaushal Kishore sir is asking why lower frequency results in shallow case depth. That's because the magnetic field penetrates further inside the job and allows you more deeper heating rather than shallow heating. Okay. Sir wants to know construction of an induction furnace for melting iron ore. Maybe this I'll take it offline, and it's a pretty much a standard thing available anywhere. It's basically when they are melting, especially the idea here is there is one critical thing that they do in melting of precious metals, and when they do melting of metal, when you want to do alloying, you have to do stirring of the molten metal. Now, to do stirring of the molten metal, it's very important that you do it in the right way. Otherwise, the alloys don't mix because they all have different viscosities. The stirring can be done through electromagnetic exchange. So by pulsating the frequency or pulsating the power, you could have an churning effect in a molten metal. That's also used very heavily in the melting of iron ore, and it's also used in gold alloying. We have Mr. Deshmukh asking, for Sandeep Deshmukh ji asking, how can we use this technology for thermal simulator for high temperature cyclic heating and cooling applications of heavy duty brakes. You can share me the details of what you want to do. We can study it and come back to you on the same, sir. How can we use this control during fabrication pre-post? Is there, Sidhuji, if you can stay around for another 15-20 minutes, the rest of the applications discussed in detail are on pre-post heating only. There is a machine available for that, and we'll share the details on the same. Yes, temperatures about 900 degrees can be achieved very comfortably. We will take the next slide on comparison between resistance and induction. Elaborating pre and post heat will happen soon, sir, just after this. One, Mr. Shrikant Nigade is asking, what is the best temperature uniformity that can be achieved across part surface when exposed to induction heating? When I share a couple of slides further down, I will show you that over a length of 12 meters on a 25 mm thick pipe from inside to outside, all across the length, the variation is under 10 degrees. Okay, so that's the kind of uniformity you can achieve. If you had a smaller job, it would be much more uniform. You could have much lower delta T. Mr. Nitin Matre will share details about impact bonding to you by email. Do we do preheat to LAS is safer manner than lesser time? We will discuss in the next. Yes, you can do preheat in low alloy steel as well, sir. Especially in P91 and all, as we move along, we'll know it's something that's more or less mandatory. For non-conductive materials like plastics and rubber, you will have to use an indirect heating method that, as I shared, we did the catheter tape tube by heating a graphite mold. Or you melt, say for example, you are melting something else, you have to do indirect heating. Same machine cannot produce two frequencies. There are different sets. So each equipment will have a range of frequencies that it can operate within. Is there any way for heating non-magnetic material using induction heating? Tamirji, yes, you can use, as long as it's a conductive material. It has to be electrically conductive. Okay. Frequency and power will do the rest. During case hardening, if you wanted to measure the temperature, sir, you will have to use optical pyrometers and things like that to give you your actual reading. Lobesh ji is asking, can we increase the case depth of an already hardened part? If you have earlier hardened at a lower case depth, and if you redo the entire process, then you can, but you might have to check the metallurgy on the other side. Vasuki ji, cost of stress relieving, we will discuss further down on larger jobs. Again, induction is more of a localized heating, as I shared. So if you were to stress relieve a particular part or a particular length on the entire job, that would be much easier to do with induction. However, if you had a large job, say a 6-meter big job, and you wanted to do the stress relieving of the whole job, then it's better to do it in a furnace, because anyways the post heating or stress relieving will happen at a fixed speed. That means the rate of heating is predefined. In those cases, the traditional furnaces would be better, or much large jobs, as you shared, 6-meter dia and above for the whole job. Yes, that would be the case. You, instead of spot welding, you can do brazing, but we can discuss your job individually, Mr. Umang. What about heating 3 individual plates before welding in an I-beam? Prakash ji, yes, you can do that through different coils, and we will see it as we go along. Okay, Gokulji wants to see the video for motor rotor induction heating. So if the time permits, I will do it at the end of this. Otherwise, we will share the video link with you. Okay, so I have now to move to the next segment. Those questions that I have not been able to answer, I promise I will take it up and send you emails with the right answers as far as I can. Okay, so if moving along, if we have to compare between the technologies, Can I have a quick poll in the meantime so that we see everybody is still there? Can we look at this before we do the comparison? Can induction increase your productivity on the shop floor for preheating applications? Can I get some responses on this quickly? I've just launched a poll. If you could see it. Yeah, thank you. I would like to know how do you feel or how much do you think it will help you? And we will see as we go along where all can it save time for you and whether it is a process that can make things quicker or will it be more slower than your present process. But we got 42% votes in. I request everybody to be a little more participative and a quick response would be really appreciated. We got 58%. Can I get some more, please, so that I can then move on to the next slide? Okay, we will call it day here. Another 5 seconds. Quick responses. We've reached about 65%. Voting has happened. 70 would be preferred. You know, that will give you a much better idea on what is happening. All right, we'll close it here. Interest of the time. And I'll share results. Most people feel that 50% or more time can be saved. 25% people feel that, 44% people feel that yes, at least 25% can be saved. So 95% people do believe that yes, it will save us time. Let's see how, right? So I'm going to now stop sharing. Did I stop sharing? Okay. Thank you. Let's go to the, yeah. So different ways to heat. At this moment, you may be using one of these three methodologies to heat. It would be either gas, electric, or induction. If the heating process is gas, it is conductive. That means, as you can see, you are throwing flames onto the job is rotating and it's heating through conduction. Again, electrical, same, although you wind the job on top of it, the nichrome wire gets heated and the heat from the nichrome wire is then conducted onto the job. And to avoid any loss of heat, we will then wrap this on top of this with a layer of Ceravol. In induction, it is through induction. So the heat is not actually being conducted, it is produced into the metal directly. The process is flammable. This process is not flammable. Even induction is not flammable. So from environment, health and safety point of view or shop floor compliances and safety norms, both these processes are much more safer that way. Coil heating pad, in terms of your gas-based heating or even the nichrome wires, the kind of flexibility available on the coil or heating pads is less. So you have a fixed shape along which you can have the flame thrown at or the nichrome wire wound at or the pads being placed at. Whereas in induction, you have a flexible coil. So you have the flexibility to wrapping it around any shape the way you like. Surroundings of where the process is being done. So if you were heating like this, the operator couldn't stand around because there's a lot of loss of the heat generated is moving closer towards the operator, and therefore it would be difficult for the operator to stay around there. Similarly, here also, if you didn't wind it with Ceravol on top, in the present situation, when this gets hot, the operator cannot put his hand here, it would be hot. In induction, since the heat is going directly into the metal, the coil itself is not at all hot. You could place your hand onto the coil while the induction process is on, but you would not feel hot. Just a caution, I hope you are not wearing any rings or bangles or metallic objects when you are touching the coil. That can heat the metal. Heating type, again, non-contact, and the ones with the nichrome pads are contact type heating. This does produce, if you're doing gas-based or propane-based heating, you will have some kind of a pollution or CO2 or emissions, whereas electrical and induction are non-polluting. Penetration of heat goes from surface to core. Similarly, here also you would heat through conduction from the surface inside to the core. Whereas in the induction, because the magnetic field is being produced directly inside, the heating is pretty much even across the surface. Efficiencies are 40% in gas, 74% in electrical, and about 84% in induction. When I mean efficiency, I mean per kilowatt that you have pumped the power in, 84% or 840 watts would go into the metal directly. Here about 740 would have gone in the electrical, and in gas only 400 watts worth of heating would have been passed on to the job. Process advantages of induction, as we have seen so far, it's a very clean technology, no pollution, no flames. It's much faster and consistent heating. As the heat is directly induced into the metal, there is no conduction loss. It's a non-skilled process. So once you put it on, press a button, it would heat on its own, repeat the same each and every time. No skill dependency. It's highly efficient, and localized heating is possible. So if you wanted to heat a very small portion of a very large component, you could do that and take it up to your normalizing temperatures or even beyond Curie point. Quick setup, so coil doesn't get hot. You can, the operator can place on and off the coil very comfortably without having to be very worried about hurting himself. Welder can weld while the coil is in place, which is another advantage. So your rotations can happen since it's non-contact. The welder can be welding and your heating is still on. And the heat is not impacting the welder. Economic, because low power consumption reduces your cycle time, your overall setup plus heating time, and it's excellent for preheating. We'll see a lot of examples following through, and it's also pretty much required for the P91 material. How does it work? A block diagram of an induction heating equipment or a controller. You would put a temperature profile that you wanted to achieve. Say, for example, you want a ramp rate of 50 degrees and you want to do about 600 degrees of peak current. So you would set that here on your profiler. You would have an error amplifier, you would have an amplifier, an inverter, and then the sensors. So this is your actual job, the pipe. The spiral thing here is your inductive coil, and it would have a thermocouple or a sensor placed onto the pipe. This feedback would go to the amplifier, and it would check whether your desired temperature has been achieved or not. If it is not, it would amplify and allow more power to be pumped to the job. If it has already reached the rate that you wanted, it would reduce or hold on to it. So this is the kind of feedback. It works very closed loop. You can have a temperature feedback system. You can also work in open loop. Accurate PID control loop, which has been added, gives you a much better control on the temperature profile. For inner loop power control, PI loop has been added. So accuracies are under 10 degrees is the temperature difference between the outer and inner surface. We did do certain experiments in as thick as 250 thick plates and pipes, and we have found that even over a period of time, the temperature difference keeps going down, and is below 10 degrees and smaller components or lower thicknesses, we can achieve a very good temperature gradient. For power control, two-stage loop has been incorporated so that you have a much better control. Inverter loop is in PLL. Chopper control is also available to invert. So a lot of controls in the power electronics side, which would give you accurate temperature profile that you wanted. What do you expect from an induction heating system for pre-weld, post-weld applications? You expect the equipment to be able to cater to most of your production line needs without replacing the coil head. So as somebody was asking, if you had a pipe or a elbow or a nozzle to flange joint, which was say 18 inches today, and tomorrow that was to be about 24 inches. The ease of doing this, both of them without having to change the coil, would be required. It should compensate for your load variation, thickness of pipe, diameter, surface to core temperatures, ease of process setting, wide range of heating profile, and it should consume less power. The Sigmatherm or the ones, the pre-weld, post-weld heat treaters, induction heaters that we are making are with air-cooled and water-cooled coils. You can decouple coils. That means if you had a larger job, on one job you could have multiple coils. Multiple machines could be used on the same job. More coils can be decoupled. And when I mean decoupled means you could cover more area, and we will show you some examples of that. And since it's a PLC based robust PID loop, it gives very accurate temperature control profiles. Typical temperature profile required for preheating and post heating is something like this. Before you weld, you want to preheat the job. So you preheat up to 200, 150, 200 degrees. During welding, you have to maintain the interpass under 250 or 300 degrees typically. And then you should have a slow cooling rate or necessary soaking for post heat for some time. Wait, complete your RT, and then you go in for a post heat cycle, which you have a heating rate of 80 to 120 degrees per hour, depending on thickness. Then you have achieved your 760 degrees, and then plus minus 10 degrees is allowed. Hold it there for a period of 2 to 4 hours. We have done some trials where we have held it for as long as 8 hours and 10 hours to ensure proper normalizing and proper heat distribution all across the thickness. Cooling rates are allowed at about 100 to 150 degrees per hour, and below 400 degrees, free cooling or air cooling is allowed. No forced cooling, natural cooling. This is the profile that needs to be achieved, and the same profile can be easily programmed on the equipment. These are some of the examples shown. On preheating, you can see that the thermocouple on the outside, on the inside, the difference is minimalistic, and the temperature range achieved is much faster. Similarly, if you look at this chart here, which was produced during the post-heat cycle, the cycle was completed in 15 hours. You could have a gradual ramp up as you programmed, held the temperature there for a couple of hours, and then a gradual cooling down, and then bringing it to a nominal temperature and letting it cool. The modes of operation on the equipment available are manual heating. So you could set the power and start, stop timer based. You could set it on preheating, where you could say, I want to preheat to a particular temperature. Then you would have to give a temperature feedback to the equipment. A thermocouple or a stitch type thermocouple or a touch type thermocouple or an optical thermocouple, anything is possible. You need to have a temperature feedback onto the system. And then you could heat to that temperature and hold it there all throughout your welding cycle. You could monitor your interpass temperatures. It could give you an alarm saying maybe you are, going beyond your interpass, stop welding. It allows you to do the complete PWHT cycle that we discussed. It allows you to program your hydrogen bakeout cycle. And it also allows you flexibility to customize your own cycle. We did do a very critical job right now for BARC along with Godrej, where we were to control the temperature very closely under 40 degrees at a 70 thick vessel. On the bottom of the vessel was where we had to do the normalizing of the temperature, and the entire program went on. It was a special customized program we did to ensure minimum difference, and it was on for more than 36 hours. And this cycle has been proven, repeated once programmed, it's repeatable, it's proven down to that level. We'll share some of the applications which are very easy and repeated and are on the shop floor seen by most of us. Please post all questions on the Q&A. We will take them in some time as we go along. So few of the applications that we'll be discussing today, pipe headers, T-joints, preheating, post-heating, backhoe buckets. So you could see the buckets, preheating of the buckets, stone crushers, long seam of pipes, and shrink fitting of bearing bodies. We'll also see a couple of other components. P91 pipes, headers, and T-joints, they all need to be preheated, post-heated, PWHT, hydrogen bakeout, everything has to be carried out. This is the kind of setup. You could see an equipment here, the coil being wound on the edge of the header, and then once switched on, it will go through right now the heating is on, it would have taken the temperature to the level desired. Typical setup for preheating, if you look at it, you could have set up the job like this. This is a huge elbow and flange. Here you have to preheat up to 250 degrees. Thicknesses are about 70 mm or so. If you were to do this with gas or with an electrical pad, the amount of time required to wind this on an electrical pad itself would be close to 2.5 hours, because you can imagine the kind of curves that are there. Whereas this in induction would take you about 10 to 15 minutes to set up. Just put the Serra bull, wind the coil like you wind a rope, fit it, and you could start. the root runs or TIG welding being done, subsequent runs of SAW or arc welding being done, the coil is in place and not a problem. You could keep welding while the coil is there and maintaining or monitoring your interpass temperatures. I'm sorry. Here, similarly, you could see a bigger vessel, a long seam of the vessel needs to be done. You could have a prefixed blanket like this placed there. Imagine the ease, the blanket never gets hot, right? You place the blanket here, leave it there for 20 minutes. This is a 50 thick vessel, if I'm not wrong, 3 meter or 2.5 meter long. This would have heated up in about 20 to 25 minutes, up to 200 degrees. Remove the blanket, start your welding, not a problem. Here is a comparison with gas-based system. This were trials done for one of our customers. If you look at this pipe here, it needs to be cladded from inside. So the temperature needs to be ensured that it's on the inside, the temperature is correct. And the temperature to be achieved was about 240 degrees. The wall thickness is about 25 mm. As you can see, the ID is 117, OD is 167, 50 thick. So wall thickness is about 25 mm. This is the burner that was used. And the burner, while the job is rotating and the burner is at a fixed position, when they tried to heat the zone of 400 millimeters, they were able to achieve 240 degrees in 20 minutes. But again, if you can see burner hitting at one time, you will have bright hot spots on some places and not so hot or equivalent temperature of 240 degrees all across the surface. However, in induction, we inserted the coil on the inside. And while the coil, this is the inductive coil, the job is still rotating. And while the coil is placed inside the heating zone of 400 mm, you are able to achieve the same job in 8 minutes. Now, while this is happening here, the operator cannot approach nearby because you can see the heat around. Here, the operator has no difficulties monitoring the temperature from the top or inside. And the ease of setup, putting the coil in and out is as simple as putting a rod in and bringing it out. No difficulty, as this doesn't get heated itself, right? 8 minutes to 20 minutes. This is the kind of setup or running time saving, right? Again, if you look at the OD, here is a very heavy, thick component being preheated. So again, with gas, it took about 16 minutes to bring in the temperatures on the surface. No way to measure it on the inside. However, here, since the heating is happening from inside, when you measure on the surface, it's ensured that the heating inside is equivalent or above the temperature. Again, assured much lesser time, much better accuracy of heating. This is another trial done for its equipment in use for pipe to elbow welding. During welding for this material of P91, the temperature, preheated temperature was at about 150 degrees. It was achieved after 15 minutes. You can see that. And the job thickness is 72 millimeters. Achieved in 15 minutes, 150 degrees. They could start welding. All thermocouples all around, all across the 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock positions gave more or less consistent reading between 1 to 2 degrees. They started the welding. And during welding, as the temperature rises, and they stopped the welding when they could. The time required to preheat was very less, as you can see, hardly 15 minutes. Setup time on something like this, again, would be not more than 15 minutes. As you can see, you have to just put the Ceravol on the job. These are the white induction coil. You could wound it, take a loop around, wind on the other side, take it back to the equipment, connect it, press start. As simple as that. Similar job here being done for post heat. We had to achieve temperature of 750 degrees. As you can see, it's achieved the 750 degrees after ramp. It is undergoing soaking for about 100 minutes, and then it will come down to 300 degrees in again a controlled slope of 40 degrees or 50 degrees per hour. This is the way the job is wound. This is a blanket, the Ceravol blanket, and along top of which they have wound the induction coil. This you can see the profile of heat generated on the inside. Now imagine you are doing a post-weld heat treatment job on a power plant piping station, right? The job itself is couple of 50, 60 meters above the ground. So you are standing somewhere at this height. Now you have a joint like this, which is in between two pipes already placed. How are you going to place your, now try, imagine putting anything here other than induction. Try it with a, say, blanket, for example. The amount of time required and effort required for the operator to fit in the blanket or the electrical pads there and then wind it over would be much higher. A lot of time, lot of difficulty to do that. Here, it becomes much easier. Put the serval on top of the job first, then wind the coil and bring the coil to the junction box. And the junction box and the equipment could be as far as 30 meters away. The equipment is 30 meters away from the joint. The cable, the coil itself is 30 meters, and you have a 15 to 30 meter interconnection cable. So this kind of flexibility is available. Another very critical application for aerospace right now happening. This material here is non-magnetic and also has a very typical challenge where it needs to jump from 650 to 850 under 2 minutes. Otherwise, the heat treatment won't be correct or it will not reach its desired solution. The way to do this was in two shifts, two parts. So we built a portable oven around the job itself. We wound the water cooled coil and preheat it up to 650 degrees and hold it there for an hour. Entire job is at 650. This job is then immersed into a existing furnace, which is already fired up at about 1100 degrees. That's the only way to achieve this solution. Otherwise, it's not possible. And this was really, really a tricky part to achieve the desired results here. As you can see, even the shape, right? Imagine this shape. It's a very difficult shape to preheat. You can see more thickness here, less here. By putting it into an inductive zone, we are able to balance and maintain the heat inside. Once at 650 degrees, it stabilizes for an hour. All parts are equally heated. Cross-country pipeline, another popular application where you can see a lot of induction used now. An induction blanket can be either the size of the pipe itself. So you could have an 18-inch, 24-inch, 32-inch, 40-inch blanket. The time taken for a person to wind the blanket on top of the job, less than 2 minutes. Preheating time to reach 150 degrees, again, less than 2 minutes. And you can see the equivalent profile all across. The other way around from this is using gas to preheat the surfaces, not usually able to get equal heat, and also the risk of overheating and ruining your coating on the other side. This has been successfully executed on many GAIL projects across India. More than 50 equipments of this nature are working in India and now also in the Middle East. Pretty much a standard application for pipeline preheating. Again, if you look at the Higgs bucket, it's got about a 20 mm thick to a 40 mm thick plate needs to be welded here. The tooth that goes on each side is about 60 mm thick. Materials are Veldox and Hardox here. And the challenge is to preheat them above 205 degrees. The way to do it with induction, we place the coil here, a simple blanket, serval blanket below it, and you could achieve 205 minutes in under 5 minutes. Again, the operator could simply pick the coil, put it on the side, and start welding. Okay. This, if you had to do with the help of a gas-based furnace, you can imagine this would take at least 20 to 25 minutes to preheat. To remove the gas burner from there and get the welder to start welding would be another challenge. When they are welding the corner teeth, they need to preheat both of them at the same time to avoid distortion, and welding also happens parallelly. To do that, the same equipment, the one coil has been made, split it, the second coil has been wound here and goes back to the equipment. Both the joints have same thickness, same geometry, 40 plus 60 mm. We were able to achieve the time of 310 degrees temperature in about 10 to 12 minutes. Setup time under 5 minutes, 10 minutes to begin with. Again, 20 minutes, your job is out. Time taken to require to put the coil in place, to remove and start welding, under 5 minutes. You see, if you were to do gas-based heating, 10 minutes would be setup time. In induction, 2 to 5 minutes setup time. Heating time, 20 to 30 minutes in a gas-based system, whereas 4 to 5 minutes on the induction heater. Safety, the gas flame is always on, so somebody there has to be careful. The surrounding area is getting hot. Here, no flammable gases to be handled onto the shop floor, extremely safe as we shared earlier. Cost saving, gas used over 30 minutes versus electricity used over 4 minutes. Electricity used over 4 minutes, even at about 15 kilowatt or say 20 kilowatt, means 20 units per hour. 20 units per hour means you can say divided by about 15, 60 by 15 would be giving you 4 minutes. So 20 units, about 1.5 units. So that's about 10 to 14 rupees of electricity consumed. That's the cost of running this back to back on the job. If you look at the time saving, now this is where our focus will be more and more as you move along. Time today is going to be more valuable than money because you will have lesser time to produce more. Here you save straight away. Say you did 4 joints a shift, on average 25 minutes per joint in gas-based heating, and 4 joints you would have taken 100 minutes. 5 minutes for 1 joint in induction to do preheating. You could have done 20 minutes, you could have done 4 joints. 100 minutes for 4 joints with gas, 20 minutes for 4 joints in induction. 80 minutes per shift, you can convert into productive time and get more jobs done. Same manpower, same equipment, more jobs done per shift. This is another classic case where we did preheating of pipes before submerged arc welding for the long seam. And then we did it post heating as well. This is a 12-meter long pipe, 25 mm thick. This is a 6-meter long pipe, about 65 millimeter thick. These two were, this is done. This is the equipment here you can see. And this is another one. Before induction, we had a huge gas bank here, which used to be maintained to continuously keep the pipe heated to about 400 degrees post welding, and pre-welding to at about 200 degrees, 250 degrees. This is a classic case where we checked that their welding time per length was about 20 to 25 minutes. So we calculated the power in a way that one pipe could be preheated while the other is being welded, so that your more expensive equipment, that is your column boom and the welding that is happening, doesn't stay idle. The minute you finished welding the first job, you put it onto the next station. You pick the preheated pipe from before and put it onto the welding station. Put a fresh pipe which is down, put the coil on top of that pipe and start your process again. In the next 25 minutes, this pipe will be ready to weld with the same temperatures of preheating that you wanted, with the same consistency. The time taken for the operator to pick and place this blanket, you can imagine, is nothing. He could just, 2 people could pick it, put it down, pick it and put it back up. The blankets are not getting hot. Mind you, the blankets don't get hot. This is a blanket stitched with Cerahole in between, so there is no heat on the surface of this blanket. We did calculations for them for preheating and post-heating, and we realized that for them, preheating a 40 kilowatt equipment was good enough to do it in 20 minutes. And for post-heating, they needed about 60 kilowatt equipment to heat in 20 minutes. So 40 kilowatt for preheating in 20 minutes and 60 kilowatt for doing it in 20 minutes. Another classic example is bearing to bearing housing fitting that you have to do. This is the last example I'll take. We are almost out of time as well, but bear with me for 5 more minutes and then we'll take your questions. So bearing housing to bearing shrink fitting is a classic example. Thicknesses are about 60 millimeters, diameters 8 inches to 64 inches. For shrink fitting, you need a temperature about 300 degrees. In shrink fitting, when you preheat the surface, it expands, and so you can put the cold part inside and fit it on top. And there should not be any drop of temperature during the fitting process. Otherwise, you will have a half-stuck bearing or an incomplete weld. So this is the housing that was there, and the bearing had to be placed inside here. They are very close fit products. This is how we wound the induction coil on top of the bearing housing. I'll share a quick video with you to show you how easy the process was. It took merely about 6 minutes to reach the temperature. Look at the ease with which the operator is now fitting the bearing inside the housing. No rush. He is doing it at his own time because the bearing housing is always going to remain at that temperature, right? He is not being pushed. He is not being rushed into anything. Once he is done, they switched off the induction, simply remove the center club, and their shrink fitting process is complete. Extremely safe, What is the alternative to this? Is dipping this bearing housing in an oil bath for 6 hours. It's in the oil bath for 6 hours. And if you had to do only one or you had to do 10 bearings, you would still have to fire up your oil bath, right? It would take 6 hours for the oil bath to reach its temperature. Here, you could do one job at a time. You could do one job in a day, do it for 6 minutes and put it aside. You don't need to fire up the oil bath for 6 hours to do anything. You could do it in 6 minutes, complete your job, dry, quick, easy, and clean method. No need to wait for the oil bath to warm up. Temperature maintained all along the process, so the operator is not rushed and he can do the job very comfortably, right? Again, to repeat the advantages of PWHT: quick heating, increased productivity, surrounding area doesn't get heated, coil is easy and safe to handle, no fire or flame due to induction heaters, it's a non-contact process, so you can be very safe and reliable heating process. Once trials have been finalized, the coil can be pre-made stitched into a blanket as you saw, so it ensures quick and easy setup. Okay, I have come to the end of our talk for preheat post-heat. I hope I have been able to derive some value in what you saw. I'm happy to answer any questions now. And let's see what's there on the Q&A session. We've got about 70 questions there. How safe induction is for cooking oven? Extremely safe. It's now a very popular way of doing it. Do you have comparison I just shared for low gas power consumption and resistance? Okay, let's take one or two more and then I'll invite Mr. Subnis to close the session. Take two more questions. Mr. Babu Singh Arora, is induction heating possible with thicknesses more than 100 millimeters up to 720 degrees? Yes, sir, it is. There is no problem. We can do that. And I'll need to know the length, the diameter and other things. It will require a lot more power. We'll have to see whether the viability of the project remains still or not in terms of costing. Okay, do you have any kind of yoke induction heating technology for heading? Yes, we do, Mr. Panda. We will discuss that offline. I can request you to share some drawings and we can discuss that also. Mr. Narendra Kumar is asking how to check welding is good or not after first pass of welding. In multi-pass welding in P91, you'll have to do the NDT, sir. I can't help you there. With each pass, you'll have to do it. Minimum preheat required for P91, I think, is between 150 and 200 degrees. Mr. Prem Arora is asking cost comparison between three modes: heating, gas, electric, and induction. Power consumption. I will try and tabulate one and share it along with all the people who have joined. And we will show you that if I can compare this, I'll share it with everybody later, definitely. As I did make certain comparison charts in the beginning, which showed what are the advantages. As far as cost is compared, you can look at it this way. The lowest cost of investment, right? You're looking at cost of investment, lowest would be gas. No capital cost required. Then would come your electrical heating furnace. Then would come the induction. Induction would be more expensive in terms of the capital investment upfront. But if you look at the running cost and the productivity time saved, then you are looking at the running cost will be least in induction, then in gas or electric. Again, if you look at power consumption between electric and induction, induction would be lower power consuming than electric gas in most cases. And with gas-based comparison, we have found with the recent studies that we have done with one of the customers that it is much cheaper. We did a analysis for preheating of a 5-meter big shell, 150 thick or 200 thick with 2 induction heaters. We are able to do that at about 25,000 rupees running cost over a period of 8 days. Whereas the cost of gas heating was in a couple of lakhs. So yes, for heavy wall thicknesses, when you're looking at a welding schedule of across 5, 6, 7 days on 200, 300 thick, induction is much, much more cost beneficial in running cost also. We can definitely take it up. Mr. Prakash Hegde is asked, does magnetic field of induction affect the welding arc in GTAW, such as arc blow? No, sir. The magnetic field is typically, the coil is wound about 150 millimeters away from the welding joint. And when you wind it there also, the magnetic field is shunt or is induced into the metal. And it's only on that local area to induce the heat. It doesn't create an arc glow. But if you brought induction very close to the tungsten, there could be an arc glow, which is possible. But on the contrary, they also use magnetic arc weavers, which help the TIG arc be more concentric. If you're doing a preheating process, it would not impact. It has been tried and it's being used on the field on a regular basis. I can assure you on that. Mr. Subhash Gogate is asking, what is water cooled? When you are wanting to carry much more power through the same coil, then the coil needs to be cooled with water. It may not be possible to use air-cooled coil. When you use air-cooled conductors, you can carry about 250 to 300 amps. When you wanted to carry about 700 amps, 800 amps, then you would need a water-cooled conductor, sir. Coating on line pipe, how is it done? The pipe, as I showed you the image, the pipe goes through an induction coil where the temperature of the induction, the pipe is achieved to about 180 degrees. The coating is poured from the top while the pipe is rotating. That's how the coating is surrounding the pipe in that format, and then it cures with the temperature that the pipe has achieved at about 180 degrees. And this is how coating is done. Okay. Please send. Okay, Mr. Rajan Kumar, we will discuss this. Induction heating is very costly initially based to gas heating. Mr. Amar, yes. How can we convince management for cost? We can discuss that particular case. If the viability is there, we will definitely pitch it to them. And now there is also possibility to buy and lease. That means they can take it on a rental basis if they don't want to buy. You can send us an email and we can discuss this further. Can we use induction heat instead of steam tracing for pressure vessels to maintain temperature? Mr. Rohit, we are doing some trials on similar lines where we are people wanting to heat water on a huge volume, oils and all. We are trying to work on that as well. We could be an alternative to generating steam by heating the pipes directly rather than heating the fuel. Can we use the process for multi-layer vessel? Yes, we can. Please share the details. We will look at it. Mr. Ravi Katamuri wants to know how easy to change setup from preheat to post-heat. Only change the settings, sir. No other changes required. Your insulation layer of Ceravol has to be sufficient. No other changes required. Is it possible to heat bricks using induction? Bricks are ceramic, non-metallic. If you put the brick in a metallic container and then heat the container, the brick would heat, sir. I think if we have, I can get Mr. Sabnis back on. Sabnis Sab, hello. If I can get Mr. Sabnis back on and check whether we have enough time. Hello.
Yeah, Nimesh.
Yeah, do you think we have some more time to answer a few more questions, or should we?
I think we already exceeded time.
Yeah.
If we have a record of questions, maybe we can separately mail them the answers.
Sure, we will do that, sir. We have about 90 odd questions people had asked. I have tried to answer as much as possible. Yeah. Rest I will definitely reply to on the email, and over the next period of 2 to 3 days, we can do that. We do give demos and we do have opportunity to discuss this and take it forward. If you have any application you feel that needs or can be used with induction, please feel free to get in touch with us. We have our team Pan India. We will discuss a solution for you and share the same. Okay. Thank you very much, Sabnis Saab, for the great opportunity to present this. I hope the session was useful to people. Yeah, and thank you everybody for spending the time in the evening and listening to us.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Nimesh bhai. It was a great session.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much for your time.